Hey, good morning. My name is Webb, and I co-own Blazing Illuminations, and we are a lighting creative services company here in Colorado. We do services and provide services all across the country, and there's a couple things I just wanted to get off my chest. I mean, here in my studio and doing all kinds of work, and really seeing a lot of things happening in the LED lighting industry that's really kind of annoying, kind of frustrating, maybe kind of a rant. So, welcome to my channel. This is really how I'm going to be, right? I'm going to start this channel. We're going to rant about a lot of things in the industry. Maybe some of you guys that are out there doing LED installs and putting things together are seeing a lot of these same kind of frustrations I'm seeing. Um, and so I'm just going to go off on some rants. I'm going to create a whole bunch of videos over the next few months here. Guys, just subscribe, jump in if you're going to be excited about seeing some of these kind of rants. I'm probably going to get into some deep stuff. I've been in this industry long enough and I've seen pretty much anything on installations, creatives, even clear down to cosplay lighting systems, things that we've done for all kinds of film and television, all the way through live events, installations, and just about anything you can think of, all the way from signage, lighting, to lights like I have in my studio and shop right now, to lights that are put on to ski areas and buildings and all kinds of stuff. So, we've got pretty good experience across the board, and there's some idiosyncrasies that I have about it. There's some business model things that I have about it too, which I think needs to get corrected. And I've also noticed a lack of old timers. It feels like, does it feel like to you guys in the last few years that the old timers have all gone away? Where are the old guys? Are the old guys just doing videos like me? Am I an old guy? But maybe I am. Maybe I'm one of the last old timers that are sticking around still. It's funny because at 49 years old, I didn't think I was going to be the old timer, but it seems like every event I go on to right now, I'm working with 20-something-year-old guys, 30-something-year-old guys, and I'm the oldest guy on the crew, which is pretty interesting. So I've got a couple of different setups. I've got two cameras in here. This is my workbench. I've done tons of projects, probably made millions of dollars on this workbench, and done all kinds of really cool stuff. I've got some gear. I've got some trash. Obviously, I mean, if you're working on a workbench, you got all kinds of stuff in collects, right? If you look at my shop, so look in the background here. So this is my shop. Back here behind us, this is just really kind of the work area, right? So I've got some drill presses and some other tools and things on there. Uh, Little screw bins that I've been meaning to organize since I was a kid, since I got them like 10 years ago. Still not fully organized. And a lot of times you end up finding a bunch of hooks to go in your little slat wall. It's going to be great. You're going to organize it. It's going to be amazing. It's going to have like all this shop laid out stuff. Everything's going to be perfect. And then, because you're doing work, it just turns into a mess like this. Also above me, and I'll do a little more of a shop tour. We have organized pretty much our entire shop the same way that if you ever saw Mythbusters back in the day, the studio that those guys did, where everything's kind of in bins on these big high shelves. So I've got 5 shelves above me full of little plastic bins, and it just is all labeled out. I'll do a shop tour on that later too on this channel. We'll go through that. We'll talk about how to organize things and keep yourself organized in your shop. And I can't say that I'm like this organized guy, so don't use me as like the best guru for organization, because I'm not. We've paid tons of people over the years lots of money to come through and organize our shops, and every time somebody comes in, it changes, right? So you just want to make sure that you get yourself organized so that maybe you as the shop manager or as the owner of the company or whoever's doing the main designing and shop and all that kind of stuff can find the parts that you need, so you're just not buying inventory over and over. So that's the introduction to this channel. This is what we're going to be doing here. I'm just going to get into one of these rants because I think that it's meaningful. I think it makes all the sense in the world. And I think it's about kind of what we're starting to see in the LED lighting industry right now, where so much of everything that we're seeing is moving into this new realm, right? So LEDs took over a number of years ago, and I was actually using LEDs in the 90s. There was a lot of really amazing, cool LED technologies back in the day. And where it really kind of broke through, I think, for the mainstream was when white LEDs were finally invented, right? And it really wasn't that it was invented. It was just some guys in a lab working on blue LEDs, and those were a big, huge breakthrough. And the blue LEDs allowed for ultraviolets and other kinds of things. And they started really seeing some interesting things with blue. And you guys will probably see this too. Like, no doubt, if you've been in the world long enough, you've seen that blue LEDs sometimes make your eyes go out of focus, right? So it's hard to focus on blue LEDs. And when the whole room is full of blue lights, like say at a concert or a festival or something like that, everything seems to go out of focus. Well, that's because it's actually outputting a really high specific bandwidth of color light, and that messes with our eyes. Our receptors in our eyes can't see that very well, and so it just causes everything to go out of focus. And that's because LEDs are very narrow, and we'll get into that stuff later too. But what it allowed us to do with blue LEDs is to apply phosphors. Now, phosphors, if you're familiar, old CRT TVs, back when they first invented TVs, and even when they invented color TVs, the phosphors were what made basically the light. It's what held the light so that the screen could be projected. So anytime the light would go across there, the phosphor would glow and it would radiate glow. It's basically like glow dust if you think about it that way. And the glow dust holds in some of that light, and then will light up in a specific color that the phosphor is being lit with, right? So for instance, with blue LEDs in the lab, this gentleman back in the day in this laboratory decided to put some cool phosphors on top of blue LEDs, and it turned it white and it radiated. So the white LEDs, and I think pretty much everything, I can't say that. I do have a fluorescent light up here, but pretty much everything you see in my scene, these guys light right here, the lights over my workbench, lights that are flowing on the table, those are RGB, but most of these lights are all white lights, and that means they have a phosphor on top of them. And so if you look really close at some of these lights, and I'll get some examples here in the next video or once we get into it. The example, if you look really close, you can actually see the colored phosphor. So if you're ever at Home Depot or you're anywhere that you're looking for, I'm trying to look around and see if I have some lights. Yeah, actually I do, right there. Okay, so this is just an MR16 bulb. I'm not going to promote that it's a good brand or not, just happens to be one that we have in the shop. We're doing a lot of retail work. This one is 3000 Kelvin. So, and it's a FEIT, fight, I don't know how you say that, electric. I think we got it at like Home Depot or Ace Hardware, but if you look inside of there, you'll see that these are yellow inside of there. And so what happens there is that helps you to check what the color temperature is. Color temperature is 30,000 or 3,000, sorry, 3000 Kelvin. And we'll get into the Kelvin range and all those kinds of things in eventual videos as well. But just by looking at those phosphors, you can tell that this is going to be more of a warmer white color. I don't have any pure white colors because I don't really believe in those. There's some idiosyncrasies that I have about that stuff, but you know, when you look at the phosphors and you can see that the warmer colors, there are applications for the color. There's a specific reason for the color, and there's a reasons for why to use that color, and that's a lighting design concern. We'll get into that too once we start breaking some things down on the bench and we get into some deeper videos specifically about lighting design. But initially, I think, you know, just having moved from old-fashioned lighting, incandescent, fluorescent, these kinds of things, even fluorescents have some phosphors in them, and then this invention of LEDs and being able to do higher, super bright LEDs, vacate out a lot of the heat that was coming in there, put the phosphors on it. Now all of a sudden LEDs became more useful in general illumination. Big thing that we got started with is we always saw them in the entertainment industry, red, greens, and blues, but they just didn't have the impact until some of the higher power LEDs came along. And then with the advent of the white stuff and the phosphors on the white LEDs, I want to say mid 2005, 6, 7, somewhere in there is when a lot of that really started to pop off. That was kind of that early adopter curve point when we started to see that. And then we got started heavily commercially by doing a lot of Christmas lights. So we were doing Christmas strings of lights, probably similar to these kinds of guys, but they didn't color change. But they were LEDs. So it dropped off the power usage from Christmas lights to like 10% what the power usage was before. And then that industry grew really quickly over a period of a year or so. And when things grow super fast, like we were really early in on the adoption of that whole thing. And we were buying lights and doing lights like crazy, and you can make a ton of money doing it. And I knew that it was going to be a few years and that whole industry was going to commoditize. And so early on, those lights were like 50, 60, 80, $100 for a string of 25 or 50 lights. And then over about a 3-year period, all of a sudden they're available in retail stores for, 10, 12, $15. It was still like 5 times more than what you would get the incandescents for, but it was way less than what I was buying them from, originally. So we saw that industry get commoditized really quickly. And it's good because what it did is it allowed a lot of power reduction across the board at the consumer homeowner level. to actually make sense. And I think that's where a lot of us, we're all homeowners, we're all consumers, we all live at that level, and we don't like paying out money to governments and other agencies to, for power and electricity and these kinds of things. I mean, so we're always considering our budgets and wanting to make sure we're on top of that. So going from Christmas lights to LEDs instead of the old incandescent stuff, it allowed you to like create these big spectacle light shows. So we got involved in that. And so there was a lot of that kind of work as well. The other part is it allowed for wall washers and other types of floodlights. And I'll bring in some of those guys too, to where we can see some of the stuff that's going on now with big monster floodlights, LEDs, super spots. A lot of the entertainment industry, most fixtures are moving away from big metal halide arc stream systems to LEDs. I mean, we're really moving in some pretty great spaces. So kind of an initial rant is I feel like, as LEDs have been becoming more and more prevalent, they're showing up in everything, right? And pretty much everybody in any industry has got to deal with LEDs at some level. So if you're doing that for just replacing bulbs in your MR16 flood strips or whatever your home fixtures, commercial fixtures are, electricians are dealing with them, obviously. Sign companies are starting to deal with them. They maybe were one of those early adopters of those too, because it was really frustrating to change out fluorescent tubes all the time. So we saw a lot of that. We're seeing it now into, incorporated into hobby stuff. So we see a lot of hobby people, but automotive has got it. Just pretty much anybody that's doing anything in the world, LEDs are really being a part of how we create and put lights into all the good stuff. So there's some rants I have in regards to that. And I want to make sure that we all stay on top of what this is all about. And it's about LEDs. It's about the best parts about LEDs and the proliferation of LEDs throughout all of our lives and how we can become better at it. So let's go into a couple of things for me specifically. I think I don't know if we can switch to this other camera, but so I have this power supply, right? So this is a gigantic mega power supply from Meanwell. This power supply can take in 277 volts AC, which is a commercial rated power, but it can also run off of standard wall outlets like you have in your home. It outputs, what would be considered 600 watts of 12 volt power. That is 40 amps of power if you do the math on that. And we'll talk about some of the math on these things later. Ohm's law and how to break down wattage and voltage to get your amperage, vice versa, and all around. The cool part about what I like about these things, and I'll just kind of go into it, is that it's universal voltage. Like this thing can be used anywhere. So commercial applications all the way through home applications. The other part is it's got multiple outputs in the sense that these two main lines right here are huge outputs. So each one of these 20 amps of 12 volt power, that's monster. And then the really cool part is right here, and I've got it all taped up, but this right here is a control circuit. So control circuit built into this where you can dim the power at the power supply, adjust the voltage at the power supply, and that's important as well. It's rated for IP, let's see, IP65, I believe, maybe IP65 right here says it right on it. And then all good different certifications and everything here. But what's really cool about this too is that you also get voltage adjust and IO adjust, so kind of an amperage flow adjust here. These two adjustment knobs allow you to dial in the power once you're on site and located. And a couple things about LEDs is while they do like 12 volts, and this power supply is going to be the best one to give them 12 volts, you don't have to buy it in some huge thing. I've got small ones here, little tiny ones. They even make little wall packs that plug in. It's just a little wall pack, like a USB charger to do that. But what you want to look for is you want to look for that voltage adjust capability, because as LEDs run on pretty much any voltage, they're always going to run on the small voltage, the low voltage at the LEDs itself, right? So I'm going to turn this off so we can see it. But in the back of this, I don't know if my camera will focus on this or not, but if you guys look at any type of LED, you're always going to see little types of little black dots. It's usually a green board. Sometimes you'll see these things a little more details. But inside of that, and on this one, there's a little more than that, but there's always going to be a resistor, right? So a resistor controls the flow of that voltage, that power, the low voltage power going into the LED. Most LEDs run on anywhere between 3 and 5 volts. Some of them will run on higher voltage than that, but for the most part, even big floodlights, strip lights, even these guys in this thing, they're running on small voltages. So they're running on that 3 to 5 volts. That's at the LED itself. So the reason you see clusters of them, like in this bulb, you see 4 of them, is because they're probably all running on 3 volts. And the power delivery source to an MR16 is 12 volts, right? So you have AC power and you have DC power. LEDs run on DC power. However, an MR16, if you bought a really high-end system, you would have it DC power, but most of them run on a ballast type of voltage transformer, and I'll get that as well. We'll talk about those things. These are basically an old voltage transformer that is using inductive voltage transformation, taking the 120 volts AC and inducing through coils and some other things we'll talk about later to the 12 volt side. And that's just depending on the windings of that. So what you get on the other side of this simple power supply is a 12 volt alternating current. The alternating current needs to be converted to direct current inside of here. So inside of this bulb, no doubt, there is a series of resistors and a full bridge rectifier and a number of other things inside this LED that are changing that voltage from the 12 volt AC to the 12 volt DC. And then these LEDs are all wired up in a series. 3 volts times 4 is 12 volts. So that's how that works. Also, each one of these LEDs doesn't run on just unlimited amount of power. So if you just give them 12 volts, they will turn on, they will light up, and then they will blow up. So that's where the resistor comes in place. So the resistor controls the flow of the voltage, the rate of flow of the voltage into there, and keeps it from getting out of control. Keeps the LEDs regulated. And we'll get into more detailed specifications about how resistors and stuff work too. And there's a number of YouTube sites online. For me, I love ElectroBoom. I think ElectroBoom is the best one that explains all the details. And he's just the best on when he's doing the videos because he's always getting shocked and doing something crazy. But it's the best way to learn because it's exciting. So that's the way. And then these guys are also using 12 volts. This uses 12 volts DC as well, but I'm converting the DC power as power supply. Anyway, that's where all the electronics start, and that's why it's really critical that we give it the proper type of power. Once we get out in the field, I'm going to do a little bit of a rant on that one. We'll talk about that kind of stuff in a little bit as well. We'll talk about field applications, how to install LEDs, how to manage your wiring, how to manage corrosion issues, and really how to manage your LED business to make sure that you can make the most out of being a profitable business using LEDs. And then for homeowners, what is the best choice to choose for LEDs? I know that, like, go down to Home Depot for Christmas and you're going to get a myriad of different things that are out there for LEDs. Walk down the LED lighting aisle and you get everything from Philips, Hue systems to everybody's got a new thing, twinkly lights for your tree, all this kind of stuff. And everybody's now putting on the permanent LEDs on their houses, those kinds of things. And so there's some stuff you really want to be concerned about how those systems are wired, how they're put together. I would say for the most part, a lot of the bigger commercial rigs that are going out there for homeowner use, they're going to have to really live up to some of the standards. So it's not that it's a safety issue, but I think it's a longevity issue. It's an issue where you think about the use of these LEDs. And I think that really brings up the last piece that we saw with Christmas lights, right? So Christmas lights kind of overpromised and underdelivered. And that for me was a big, big, big problem. Because I'd go sell a $65 or $75, $100 light string when we were putting up Christmas lights, and on all the promotion material would say, oh, these will last 100,000 hours. And that's amazing. 100,000 hours? That's awesome. That means these things should work for 20 years. And I think we've been in this industry long enough, and I think you've probably seen LEDs long enough. They don't last 20 years. They reduce our power, and that's amazing, but they sure as heck don't last 20 years. Most of the reasons for that is because it's not the LEDs, it's all the other electronics inside. And if you think about it too, from a business standpoint, why would I make an LED that you could plug into your house and you bought it and I wouldn't sell you another one for 20 years? Not a very good business model, is it? So I think that's probably not very smart. And I think that's why a lot of companies are maybe not building them as robust as they possibly could be. So that's some things to be concerned about. And then for all the integrators out there, you guys, whether you're working in signs, whether you're working in a lighting company, whether you're working for integrations, building it, even down to cosplay and consumer hobby use and homeowners, you really want to consider the purchase of the equipment that has the longest lifetime. And to do that, when you're at the integrator level, builder or the sign company level, you have to build the systems with reliable products. Homeowners want 20 years out of this. They're not going to get it. But when it blows up, as long as it's not super expensive, it's okay. We'll buy another one. Hey, it lasted 3, 4, 5 years. Now at the business level, what you don't want is you don't want to go out there and put up an installation, put up some lights, put up a sign, whatever it is that you're working in, and have a callback. You just don't want callbacks. Callbacks need to be eliminated. And there are ways to eliminate entirely callbacks. I can't say that I've never had callbacks, but I have some ways on how to minimize or even mostly eliminate callbacks. And callbacks for me are, I go put the installation together and somebody calls me and says, hey, it's not working, something broke or something happened. Yeah, sometimes I'm forced into making a budget concern, and so I maybe buy a cheaper string that maybe I didn't test as much. Maybe it was a strip light like this guy. Let's see, I'll pull this guy out. This is a good brand. I actually like them. I tested them a lot, so it's not that these guys are bad. And they're not the worst. You can get a lot of this stuff on Amazon, and you can really find some good stuff on Amazon. BTF Lighting is actually a pretty good brand. I'm not being paid by them, but I've had some good reliability with them. I've also had some terrible reliability with them. So this here is an LED tape light. You no doubt seen this. This is a digital tape light. This light strip here, I've had reliable use of this, but it's because of reasons. I can make this strip super reliable as maybe some of the other bigger guys. So if you go to a Philips system or something like that, I can make this as or even more reliable than theirs. And there's magic tricks inside of an LED studio, creative studio like us, that can make those things extremely reliable. Same here. I can make these super reliable, but it takes a little bit more money, and it takes a little bit more thought process and some design process. So that's what we're going to be talking about on this channel. We're going to be talking about, let's just go down the list. We're going to talk about LEDs, applications, uses, and how they work and why. We're going to be talking about modern iterations of LEDs, things like strip lights, where you're getting into like digital strip lighting. This is lighting that is controlled by computers. We're going to be getting into Christmas types of lights and why certain types of lights. These are also digital lights, and they come in different form factors. And we're also going to be talking to sign companies that no doubt you guys are starting to see these things showing up. These are also digital LED systems. And if you count 1, 2, 3, 4, right? Hey, red, green, and blue, and even red, green, and blue and white LEDs. These guys are now coming to the sign industry. We're replacing modules that were just normally white modules, and now we're looking at RGB modules and even smart modules like these guys. So we're going to start talking about that kind of stuff, and we're going to get you guys familiar with a number of things. I've got a lot to talk about. I could probably make 40 videos, and it'll be something that you guys are going to be really excited about. When I first started this channel, I thought, man, I'm going to tell them about LEDs. It's going to take 5 minutes. But what have we been? We've already been here at least 10 minutes now, right? I don't even know how long we've been here talking about LEDs. Obviously, I can talk about it for days, and there's a lot to really get into. So we'll get into some of the nitty-gritty details in this series of videos over the next few months as we go through with this process. And I also want you to know that I'm personally starting to offer some consultation and some design work for people. So if anybody out there in the YouTube sphere that wants to have me come and help them look at a project, figure out a project, wide open. I'll include some of my contact information on in the description below. And so at this point, I'm just trying to build a really great channel, hoping to build LED lighting people and their business, giving you guys some pointers and tips. For I'm an old timer. Am I an old timer? 49 years old. Am I an old timer? Oh my gosh. Anyway, yeah, good tips and tricks. We'll sit here at the bench. We'll talk through some stuff. I'll show you a bunch of different projects we're working on and how things are going together, and we'll talk about it from there. So yeah, if you guys are liking this and feel like it's some good information and maybe could help you make your business better and help you maybe explain to your friends and family LEDs a little bit better, like and subscribe. We're going to be doing this. It's going to be a fun adventure. Thank you guys very much. Look forward to seeing you. Like and subscribe. Talk to you soon.